I still remember the moment I realized my parents didn't believe I was worth the effort. It was a sweltering July evening in 2019, the kind where the heat presses down and makes even small decisions feel heavy. My name is Harper Sinclair. I'm 21 now, and that night, my world shifted without warning. College acceptance letters have just arrived, and I held mine in my shaking hands, while my twin, Camille, practically floated with excitement over hers. She'd been accepted to Westfield University, a prestigious private school that cost nearly $70,000 a year. I had Eastmont State, a solid public university, $28,000 per year. Still expensive, but manageable if someone believed in me. Instead, my dad leaned back in his leather chair like some CEO at a board meeting and looked me straight in the eyes. "Camille will have her tuition covered in full," he said, his voice casual, almost rehearsed. I swallowed hard, expecting some follow-up words of encouragement, some gesture that I mattered, but there was none. "Harper, you're on your own," he added, almost as an afterthought. And just like that, the knife slid in. Not because I was incapable, not because I lacked drive, but because I wasn't the right investment. I looked at my mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Camille. She was already texting her friends about Westfield. I had to figure this out myself. At first, anger flared, hot and immediate. But it didn't last. I didn't cry that night. I had cried too many times over birthdays ignored, hand-me-downs, and being left out of family photos. Instead, I sat on my bedroom floor, staring at my acceptance letter and whispering a truth that would guide the next 4 years. They didn't see my value, so I'd have to show it myself. That's when I began a plan so meticulous it consumed every corner of my thoughts, every hour of my waking day. I would work 3 jobs, track every dollar, find scholarships, and navigate a system designed for those who had everything handed to them. I know this sounds like the beginning of one of those revenge stories, but I wasn't doing it to make them pay. I was doing it to prove to myself that I could rise above neglect, that I could turn rejection into fuel. The first night I started searching for scholarships, the glow of my cracked laptop felt like a spotlight on a stage meant for me alone. I scribbled notes in a worn notebook, calculating, recalculating, planning a route from nothing to a future they insisted I didn't deserve. That summer, while Camille posted selfies from her trip to Malibu, I started early morning shifts at a coffee shop, nights cleaning dorms, afternoons tutoring, often collapsing into bed for 4 short hours of sleep. My room was tiny, barely enough space to stretch, a constant reminder that the life I was building wasn't going to be easy, but it was mine. And in the quiet moments, when exhaustion and doubt tried to creep in, I whispered to myself again, "Freedom comes at a price, and I am willing to pay it." Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? That night, I understood what that meant. I didn't just want recognition. I wanted to claim my own worth, to carve out a space where my potential could no longer be ignored. And little did I know, the choices I made that summer would set the stage for moments of triumph, humiliation, and hard-earned dignity that I would carry for the rest of my life. If you like, I can continue immediately with Cheung 2, where Harper's struggle intensifies, the parents' favoritism escalates, and the first seeds of the scholarship twist are planted. This will smoothly build the next emotional high. Do you want me to proceed with Cheung 2 now? The tension in our house didn't need words at first. It seeped into the corners like smoke. After that July evening, I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. Camille got the newest laptop, the designer clothes, the fancy summer trips abroad, while I scoured thrift stores for a winter coat that didn't have holes in the lining. My parents never meant to humiliate me. Or maybe they did. It's hard to tell. But every action, every decision screamed one thing: you are not worth the investment. That August, as I packed for Eastmont, my dad casually mentioned, "I don't see why you even need a new laptop. You're smart. You'll figure it out." Figure it out. Those two words replayed in my head for weeks, a cruel echo that both challenged me and reminded me how alone I really was. Camille, meanwhile, was posting selfies with her new Westfield roommate, champagne glasses clinking, captions like, "Living my best life."
Congratulations, Harper.
I forced a smile, carried my second-hand suitcase, and whispered to myself that night, "This isn't a race against her. It's a race to prove me right." The first week at Eastmont was brutal. I worked at the campus coffee shop from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., then ran to classes, studied in the library until midnight, and barely got 4 hours of sleep each night. My room was so small, I had to climb over my suitcase to reach the bed. But I had made peace with it. Every day I reminded myself, this is freedom. Even if it comes with exhaustion. Even if it comes without acknowledgement. But then came the call that pushed everything into high tension. One evening, while I was organizing my tutoring schedule, my mum phoned. Her voice sounded almost casual, too light. "Harper, how are you? Are you eating enough?" I told her I was fine, but I could hear the awkwardness beneath her words. Then she added, "Camille misses you. She's sad you don't come home for anything anymore." Sad. As if my absence was a choice, not the result of being invisible for 16 years. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I almost lost my composure. Almost. I hung up, closed my textbooks, and stared at the wall. I didn't need them to understand. I needed to understand myself. The family's favoritism became sharper that fall. During Thanksgiving, I scrolled through photos on social media, and there it was, Camille at the head of the table, my parents beaming, every detail of the spread perfect. And me? No place setting, not even a chair pulled out in my honor. The photo wasn't meant to hurt, but it did. The ache was raw, sharp. I felt the sting of neglect, the sting of being invisible in a family that was supposed to be home. It was also the first week I realized something else. Being underestimated could be an advantage. While everyone else assumed I couldn't compete, I quietly mapped out scholarships, merit grants, and opportunities that weren't handed out. They were earned. Eastmont had a program for independent students with full tuition coverage, and though only a few students were selected, I decided then that I would be one of them. I would transform my invisibility into a weapon, my rejection into fuel.
And so I stand here today,
that night, as I lay on my bed counting the hours I could sleep before my 5 a.m. shift, I whispered to the darkness, "They don't believe in me. Fine, I will." The resolve was sharp, brittle, almost desperate, but it was enough. I didn't yet know that the next months would push me to the brink, that Camille and my parents would continue their subtle, almost surgical cruelty, that I'd be mocked, overlooked, or misunderstood. But I did know one thing. I was no longer waiting for anyone's approval. And for the first time, the thought of proving myself right felt sweeter than the idea of revenge. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people who are supposed to see you? That's what my freshman year taught me. And little did I know, the first seeds of recognition and the first real tests of my endurance were waiting just around the corner. If you like, I can proceed with Chapter 3, where the story escalates further. Harper faces the cruelest manipulations from her family. The first scholarship twist is revealed, and the tension rises toward her first major breakthrough. Do you want me to continue with Chapter 3 now? By the time midterms rolled around, Harper realized that the quiet cruelty from home wasn't just neglect, it was strategy. Camille's texts had shifted from casual boasting to subtle digs, little reminders of how lucky I was to be at a state school. My parents, always so charming in public, began questioning every choice I made. Are you sure you can handle that internship? It's very competitive, my father asked during a phone call, his tone polite but pointed, the kind that made me second-guess myself for a moment before I remembered who I was. Every word from them was a test, a measure of my weakness, a reminder that in their eyes, I was expendable. One evening, I returned from my third job at the library, exhausted and covered in ink stains from grading papers as a TA, to find a package on my bed. It was from Camille, a care package she claimed, but the note inside was unmistakably sharp.
We did this together.
Hope this helps you survive your dorm life. Don't work too hard, you might hurt yourself. She signed it with a flourish. I stared at the words, my chest tight. This was no mistake. This was a reminder that she was still in control, still seen as the favored child, still the one who had the world handed to her, while I had to claw for every inch. And then, the dean's office called with a brutal reminder of how much I had to prove. Harper, they said, the competition for the Eastmont Independent Scholar Award this year was fierce. Only 3 students would get full tuition and a stipend. They wanted to see my final essay before the committee. My heart sank. This was my one chance at leveling the field, at proving that I deserved every opportunity, and the pressure hit like a wave. I realized that this scholarship wasn't just a prize, it was a lifeline. And if I failed, I would return home exactly as they expected, broken, frustrated, invisible. The next week was relentless. I wrote and rewrote my essay in the small light of my dorm lamp, tears mixing with coffee stains, my fingers raw from typing late into the night. Each paragraph was a battle, each word a test of endurance. I thought about the early mornings, the endless shifts, the ramen dinners, the nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was enough. And in those moments of exhaustion, the anger I had long kept buried bubbled up. Not a destructive anger, but the kind that sharpened focus, that refused to let them win. Then came Thanksgiving. I didn't go home. Instead, I stayed in my tiny room, staring at the screen as family photos streamed past my feed. Camille was at the head of the table, my parents' smiles beaming for her. My absence was invisible, and I allowed myself a small, bitter laugh. They don't see me yet,
Thank you so much,
I whispered.
Professor. I'm honored.
That night, something shifted inside me. I realized I didn't need them to recognize my value. Not
So I
now,
stand here today,
not ever.
the first person in my
If they
family
wanted to
ever
challenge me,
graduate
to
from
test me,
university.
to make me
We did
feel
this
small,
together.
I would respond not with tears or complaints, but with relentless effort and focus. A week later, the essay was submitted, and for the first time, I felt a strange kind of calm. Camille might have thought she could intimidate me. My parents might have hoped I'd crumble under the weight of their expectations. But I had learned something vital. My worth didn't come from their approval. It came from every hour, every choice, every sacrifice I had made. That realization was powerful. It was also the first step in turning the tables, and little did they know, the first seeds of revenge stories were quietly taking root. Chapter 3 pushes the family conflict to a sharp edge, showing both the manipulation from the parents and Camille, and Harper's rising resilience. The stage is set for Chapter 4, where the scholarship results and first public victories intensify the tension. Do you want me to continue with Chapter 4 next? The morning the scholarship results were announced, I felt like my entire body was holding its breath. I had stayed up all night, rereading every essay, imagining every possible mistake, and wondering if all the exhaustion, all the sacrifices had been enough. Then the email arrived. Eastmont Independent Scholar, final selection. I stared at the screen so long that the words blurred, my fingers shaking as I clicked to open it. My eyes widened, and then I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight, trying to make sense of the disbelief. I had done it against every expectation, against every silent shove and subtle insult from Camille and my parents. I had succeeded. Full tuition, a generous stipend, the works. And I hadn't even told anyone yet. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed relentlessly. Camille's name flashed across the screen, and I knew she had somehow caught wind of the preliminary news. Her text wasn't just a congratulation. It was a test. Are you serious? This is impossible. Mom and Dad are going to be furious you didn't tell them. I let the message sit. My heart raced, not from guilt, but from the awareness that I finally had leverage, though I wasn't ready to use it yet. The real challenge hadn't begun. 2 days later, my father called. His voice was unusually calm, almost calculating. Harper, we need to discuss your plans. You're making big choices at a young age, and I want to make sure you understand the consequences. It was polite on the surface, but underneath, it was the same old trap. Guilt, control, and the subtle threat that they could still derail me. I didn't argue. I listened, measured my words, and kept my voice even. Every sentence he used to belittle or intimidate me only strengthened my resolve. I realized that they weren't just underestimating me. They were actively trying to manipulate me into self-doubt. That evening, Camille arrived at my dorm unannounced. She carried a bottle of sparkling cider and a smirk that barely disguised her satisfaction. "So, the miracle child managed to get a scholarship," she said, her tone dripping with faux admiration. "Don't tell me you're going to get cocky now." I felt the old familiar sting, the way she always framed my achievements as if they were accidents or flukes. But instead of shrinking, I laughed. Quietly, to myself, but enough that she noticed. Then came the small, absurd moment that broke the tension for just a heartbeat. As Camille reached across my desk to grab a pen, she tripped on the edge of the rug, sending the bottle of cider flying. It bounced off the bookshelf, spraying papers, and landed with a wet thud on her lap. She froze, eyes wide, as if the universe itself had just mocked her. For a moment, I almost laughed out loud. Camille, who had spent years trying to intimidate and outshine me, was drenched and humiliated by her own clumsiness. The irony wasn't lost on me, but the relief was fleeting. My parents called later that night. My mother's voice trembled with feigned composure. My father's sharp questions cutting through the quiet of my room. They demanded explanations, tried to guilt me, and in every word, I could hear the underlying disbelief that I had accomplished what they refused to support. My exhaustion hit its limit. 4 jobs, sleepless nights, cold meals, constant pressure. It all collided in a moment of silent fury. I wanted to scream, to cry, to collapse. But instead, I felt a clarity I hadn't known before. They had tried to break me, to define my worth. And now, all I had to do was step forward and let my life speak. By the end of the night, I sat alone, surrounded by papers and half-empty coffee cups, thinking about the path ahead. Camille's moment of humiliation lingered, brief and absurd, yet satisfying. My parents' fury, still simmering over the phone, was proof that I was finally visible. Not their invisible child anymore, but someone they couldn't ignore. I realized that the real battle was just beginning. But for the first time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt unstoppable. Chapter 4 heightens the stakes. The scholarship win triggers parental and sibling escalation. Harper reaches emotional and physical limits, and the small comedic moment provides a subtle, calmer beat without disrupting the drama. I can continue with Chapter 5, where Harper's public triumph at the new university sets up the climactic confrontation, if you want me to. Do you want me to proceed? The next few weeks blurred into a strange rhythm of anticipation and quiet plotting. Harper kept her scholarship documents close, reviewed her essays, and meticulously organized her transcripts. But she did so with a calmness she hadn't known in years. The exhaustion of the past semesters had taught her discipline, but the sting of her parents' disbelief had ignited a sharper awareness. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was preparing. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every achievement she had quietly accumulated was a tool, a proof she could wield if needed. It started small. She arranged meetings with professors she had impressed in prior semesters, quietly gathering letters of recommendation. She emailed the scholarship board, confirming every detail of her award, and even documented the timeline of her applications and achievements. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control, about reclaiming the narrative that had been stolen from her. Harper knew that once she walked onto that stage, everything her parents had ignored for years would be undeniable. Meanwhile, Camille's subtle manipulations began to crack. Harper overheard her boastful texts being forwarded to mutual friends, her tone slightly anxious. Harper realized that Camille had assumed she would crumble, that she would beg for approval or money. But Harper had been silently building a fortress around herself. And in that quiet observation, Harper felt a surge of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Power. Not dominance exactly, but clarity. She could finally see the entire board, the deception, the favoritism, the assumptions, and she could decide how to respond. One evening, Harper's roommate dropped by, carrying a box of mismatched mugs they had found in the dorm kitchen. "I swear, someone keeps leaving their dishes everywhere," her roommate laughed. Harper smiled, allowing herself the briefest moment of humor, and remarked, "Reminds me of home. Except at home, it was always my stuff that disappeared." Her roommate raised an eyebrow, chuckling. "Sounds like someone's been underestimated." Harper's smile lingered longer than it should have, a private acknowledgement that she was ready, that she had survived the small cruelties, and she was poised to reveal the truth. The real test came when Harper received an unexpected call from the Dean of Eastmont's Scholarship Committee. His voice was calm but firm. "Harper, congratulations again. I hope you understand what this award represents. Not just the money, but the recognition of your resilience and determination." Harper nodded, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. She realized he had seen through her quiet struggle, the long nights, the sacrifices that her parents and even Camille had dismissed. "I understand, sir," she said, voice steady, "and I'm ready to honor it." By the end of the week, Harper began to notice the subtle shifts in the environment around her. Professors who had previously overlooked her work sought her out. Classmates began to ask her advice. Even Camille, with her usual confidence, seemed tense, cautious. Harper knew it was only a matter of time before the culmination, the public acknowledgement that would finally force her family to see her for who she truly was. She wasn't invisible anymore. Sitting alone in her small room, she reflected on the journey so far. The endless hours of work, the moments of doubt, the tiny victories no one had witnessed. For the first time, Harper allowed herself to feel a sense of completeness, a feeling that she had been preparing all along. Not to humiliate anyone, not to seek revenge, but to step into her own life with dignity. And in that quiet, deliberate preparation, she found peace. The storm was coming, but she was ready to face it, unshaken and resolute. Chapter 5 shows Harper's awakening. She moves from reacting to orchestrating, quietly gathering proof and preparing for the ultimate confrontation. It builds the tension naturally, keeping the drama high without a forced showdown yet, and sets the stage for the final, climactic chapter. If you want, I can write Chapter 6 next, where Harper's public triumph and family confrontation deliver the emotional climax and resolution. Do you want me to proceed? Graduation day arrived with a crispness in the air that made Harper's chest tighten. The sunlight reflected off the polished campus steps, and the soft murmur of families gathering filled the quad. She adjusted her cap nervously, but there was no panic this time, only a steady calm, the kind that comes from knowing you've done everything in your power to claim your own story. As she walked toward the stage, she caught a glimpse of her parents in the front row, faces bright with expectation. They had come for Camille, unaware that Harper would be standing at the podium, fully adorned with the medallion that symbolized years of sacrifice, late nights, and relentless determination. When her name was called, Harper rose. The crowd erupted into applause, but the sound seemed to fade into a quiet hum around her. Every step toward the microphone felt deliberate, a rhythm of proof she had been building for herself, unseen and unsanctioned. She looked out at the faces in the audience, past the excited students and proud families, and her gaze settled on her parents. The expressions on their faces shifted from pride in Camille to disbelief, confusion, and finally, an understanding that they had been watching the wrong daughter all along.
Thank you so much.
Harper took a slow breath. She did not speak with anger, nor did she recount every slight or insult she had endured. Instead, she shared her journey, the late nights at the library, juggling multiple jobs, the exhaustion, the moments of doubt that could have broken her but didn't. She told the story of resilience, of finding strength when no one else would acknowledge it, of building a life on her own terms. The applause that followed was genuine, rising in waves, not because of revenge, but because the truth was undeniable. And then, just briefly, a small moment of levity broke through the intensity. Her little cousin, who had wandered near the stage, tripped over a cord, sending a stack of pamphlets fluttering across the floor. The audience laughed quietly, a short, humanizing interruption, and even Harper allowed herself a small smile. It was perfect, not distracting, not mocking, just a tiny ripple in a sea of triumph that reminded everyone that life had its little ironies. Camille's eyes went wide, a silent acknowledgement of karma without a word spoken. When the applause died down, Harper stepped back, letting the moment exist for what it was. Her parents approached her cautiously afterward, and for a moment there was silence, a recognition of the gap that had existed for so many years. Harper didn't need to demand an apology, nor did she need them to explain themselves. She simply said, "I've done what I set out to do. I'm living my life now." Her words were firm but calm, carrying the weight of someone who had reclaimed her own worth. Later, sitting in her small apartment, Harper reflected on the day. She had not yelled, had not sought to humiliate, and yet justice had been served in its quietest, most satisfying form. Recognition, dignity, and the undeniable evidence of her perseverance. No loud confrontation, no vindictive speeches, only the reclamation of her life and her self-respect. She thought of the viewers who had followed her story, those who had felt overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated, and she hoped they saw what she had learned: the power to define your own worth, to set boundaries, and to rise above cruelty without losing yourself in bitterness. The lingering echo of the day wasn't shame for her parents, nor a hollow victory. It was a quiet sense of closure. Harper had built her life on her own terms, and in doing so, she had reclaimed something far more valuable than revenge. She was free, and that freedom carried with it a dignity that no one could take away. And for anyone watching, anyone who had ever been silenced or overlooked, Harper's final lesson was simple. Your worth is yours to claim, and no one else gets to decide it for you. Chapter 6 closes the story with quiet justice and restored dignity, leaving a resonant, healing emotional impact for the audience. Harper's victory is internal and external, acknowledged by herself and visible to others, without needing explosive revenge, keeping the drama and emotion intact. If you want, I can polish all 6 chapters into a fully cohesive, audio-ready script, with smooth transitions and subtle audience interaction lines woven naturally throughout. That would make it immediately ready for YouTube narration. Do you want me to do that next?